In Game 2 of the 1954 World Series, John Antonelli gave up a home run on the very first pitch that he threw. But he was able to settle himself down, and he regained his composure and picked up a 3-1 complete game victory over Early Wynn and the Cleveland Indians. Later on in the series, in Game 4, he would come in relief and get the save as the San Francisco Giants defeated the Cleveland Indians 4-0. Antonelli wasn't only one of the stars of the World Series that season. He was one of the premier pitchers all season long. He finished with 21 wins, and he had a league-leading ERA of 2.30. 2 seasons before the creation of the Cy Young Award, Antonelli was named the Sporting News Pitcher of the Year, and he finished 3rd in MVP voting that season. Over the course of the decade, of which he donated 2 years of to the military, Antonelli won 116 games, had over 1,000 strikeouts, and had an ERA of 3.16. The 9th greatest pitcher of the 1950s also goes to that 1954 World Series Giants team, this time to Sal Maglie. In 1950, Sal won 18 games with a league-leading 2.71 ERA, and then in 1951 he led the league with 23 victories and had a very low ERA of 2.93. After a dismal 1955 season and a very slow start to the 56 season, which he only pitched 5 innings for the Cleveland Indians, the Brooklyn Dodgers decided to take a chance on him, and they purchased his contract from the Indians. That 1956 season with the Brooklyn Dodgers, while only winning 13 games with a 2.89 ERA, may have been his best season ever, as he ended up finishing 2nd in MVP voting and 2nd in the first ever Cy Young Award voting. That season, he also pitched a no-hitter, and then in Game 1 of the World Series, he outdueled New York Yankee legend Whitey Ford for the victory. In Game 5 of that year's series, he pitched brilliantly again, only giving up 2 runs to the mighty New York Yankees in a complete game effort. But he took the loss, as that was the same day that Don Larsen famously threw the only perfect game in World Series history. One of the interesting things to me about Sal's Major League Baseball career is it didn't start in earnest until he was 33 years old in 1950. The reason for the late start was because in 1946, Sale played in the upstart Mexican League, and that resulted in being blacklisted and banned from Major League Baseball by then Commissioner Happy Chandler. It wasn't until 1950 that that ban was lifted and he was able to play. For the decade, Sale had 114 victories versus only 58 losses and had an ERA of 3.19. Sale's 1956 teammate Don Newcomb is the man that beat him out for both the MVP award and the Cy Young Award that season. And Don Newcomb comes in the 8th spot for the greatest pitcher of the 1950s. That 1956 season, when Don Newcomb won the first ever Cy Young Award, included 27 victories versus only 7 losses, 18 complete games, 5 shutouts, and a whip of under 1. Like many other of the pitchers on this list, Don Newcomb, in an era where maybe sports wasn't the most important thing in life, gave up 2 years of his career to the military. Newcomb started his career in 1949 with the Dodgers, thus becoming just the 3rd major league pitcher to be African American. And all he did that rookie season was win 17 victories, have a 3.17 ERA, and win that season's Rookie of the Year award. In 1950, he won 19 games, and in 1951, he won 20 while also leading the league in strikeouts. Not only could Newcomb throw a baseball, he could hit it. In less than 900 career at-bats, he hit 15 home runs, and of pitchers, he has the 9th highest batting average ever at .271. For the decade, Newcomb had 126 victories, 917 strikeouts, and an ERA of 3.54. The 7th greatest pitcher of the decade goes to Boston and Milwaukee Brave, Lou Burdett. In 1950, Burdett was traded from the Yankees to the Braves for four-time 20-game winner Johnny Sain. And from there, Burdett became part of one of the best pitching rotations during the 1950s. During the 1957 World Series, Burdett won Game 2 over the New York Yankees by giving up just 2 runs over 9 innings. In Game 5 of that same series, he pitched a 1-0 complete game shutout for his second victory of the series. Game 7 of that series was supposed to go to his teammate Warren Spahn, but when Spahn came down with the flu, the Braves turned to Burdett one more time. Burdett, on just 2 days of rest, responded with another complete game shutout for his third victory in the series, and somehow they ended up naming him World Series MVP. Burdett also claims fame in having been the winning pitcher in one of the most amazing pitching performances in Major League Baseball history. In 1959, Pittsburgh Pirates hurler Harvey Haddox pitched an amazing 12 perfect innings, only to lose the game in the 13th inning. That day, Burdett pitched a 12-hit complete game, 1-0 victory. Burdett led the league in 1959 with 21 victories. In 1956, he led the league with a 2.70 ERA, and in 1958, he finished third in Cy Young Award voting. Cleveland Indians ace and Hall of Famer Bob Lemon comes in at number 6. Bob Lemon led the American League in victories 3 times, and 5 times he had 20 or more victories. He led the league in innings pitched 3 times, including 1952 when he threw over 300 innings. In fact, from 1950 to 1956, Bob Lemon averaged 267 innings pitched per season. During his career, Lemon was a 7-time All-Star, and in an era where there wasn't a Cy Young Award yet, he won the Sporting News Pitcher of the Year 3 times. For the decade, he won an even 150 games with 888 strikeouts and an ERA of 3.34. Slugger Ted Williams said that Bob Lemon was one of the best pitchers that he ever faced. And speaking of sluggers, Bob Lemon is second on the all-time list for home runs by a pitcher with 37. And the 5th greatest pitcher of the 1950s, 5-time All-Star, 1950 Rookie of the Year runner-up, another man that donated 2 years of his career to the military, New York Yankees Hall of Famer Whitey Ford. Whitey Ford led the American League in ERA twice during the 1950s, and it's amazing to me that he only led the American League twice in the 1950s because his ERA was 3.04 or lower every single season. His decades-long ERA total of 2.66 is the lowest amongst all starting pitchers during the decade. In Ford's 1950 rookie season, he won his very first 9 decisions, and then he recorded 26 outs in Game 4 of the World Series for a 5-2 victory over the Philadelphia Phillies. He finished that season with a 2.81 ERA and just 1 loss. After spending 2 years in the military, Ford would average 16 wins per season for the rest of the decade, and he would help lead the New York Yankees to 4 World Series championships. Ford won 121 games versus only 50 losses in the decade, and for his career he won 236 games versus 106 losses, which is a .690 winning percentage, which ranks him number 1 amongst modern pitchers with more than 150 victories. The honor of being the 4th greatest pitcher in the 1950s goes to 1956 and 1957 Sporting News Pitcher of the Year, Chicago White Sox, Billy Pierce. Pierce won 155 games during the decade with a 3.06 ERA. And my favorite stat, strikeouts, he had nearly 1,500 of them, and he led the league in 1953 with 186. He twice led the league in strikeouts per 9 innings, and he twice won 20 games. And in 1955, he led the league with a 1.97 ERA. Pierce developed a fierce rivalry with the New York Yankees during the decade, and despite having to face Hall of Fame legends such as Mickey Mantle and Yogi Berra, and at the same time getting very little run support himself, he had a very respectable 21-21 record against the New York Yankees during the decade. Number 3, and while primarily pitching with the Cleveland Indians during the decade, Early Wynn won the 1959 Cy Young Award with the Chicago White Sox. While in Cleveland with Bob Feller, Bob Lemon, and Mark Garcia, Wynn was on part of what many feel is one of the greatest rotations in baseball history, and in 1954 the Cleveland Indians would win a Major League record 111 games. Wynn was known for his toughness and his willingness to throw at batters, and he once said that he would throw at his own grandmother if she tried to dig in on him. For the decade, Wynn won 188 games, had 162 complete games, and his 1,544 strikeouts led all pitchers for the decade. He had 20 or more wins 5 times, he led the league in innings pitched 3 times, and he twice led the league in strikeouts. For his career, he was a 7-time All-Star, and he is one of only 24 pitchers to accumulate 300 career victories. So that this video isn't an hour long, I just want to have a couple very quick honorable mentions. Number 1, Ellis Kinder. While he pitched less than 800 innings for the decade, he recorded 54 wins and led all pitchers with 98 saves. Second, another Cleveland Indians great pitcher, Mike Garcia. He won 128 games over the course of the decade. He had over 1,000 strikeouts. He led the league in ERA twice. Both these pitchers deserve more attention than I'm giving them, but there's only so much time in a day. The second greatest pitcher of the 1950s is a 7-time All-Star, Philadelphia Phillies Hall of Famer, Robin Roberts. From 1950 to 1955, Roberts had a minimum of 20 wins per season with an average of 23 wins per season. He also led the league in innings pitched for each of those 6 seasons, averaging 327 innings pitched per season. He led the league in complete games 5 consecutive seasons, and he led the league in strikeouts twice. During the entire decade, he never missed a start, and at one point he had pitched 28 consecutive complete games, and one of those games was a 17-inning performance against the Braves. In 1952, he pitched for 338 innings and won 28 times with a 2.59 ERA. And then each of the following 3 seasons, he won 23 games per year. In 1954, he nearly pitched a perfect game. He gave up a leadoff home run to Cincinnati Redleg Buddy Adams, and then he retired the next 27 consecutive batters. Roberts finished his Hall of Fame career with 286 career victories, and I think it's safe to say that it's very unfortunate that in his 19-year career he was only able to pitch in 1 postseason game. The greatest pitcher in the 1950s, yet another Boston and Milwaukee Brave Hall of Famer, Warren Spahn. Spahn was a 9-time All-Star during the decade. He won the 1957 Cy Young Award. In 1958, he was a Cy Young Award runner-up, and 4 different seasons he finished in the top 5 for MVP voting. This guy won 20 or more games 8 times during the 50s, and his ERA was 3.0 or less 6 times. He led the league in wins 5 times, complete games 4 times, strikeouts 3 times, innings pitched twice, and in 1953 he led the league with a 2.10 ERA. My favorite Warren Spahn story is how in 1963 he was engaged with a pitching duel with Hall of Famer Juan Marichal. Both pitchers had gone 15 scoreless innings, and Marichal withstood mound visits from his manager in the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, the 13th, and 14th innings, resisting being pulled each time. Finally, during the mound visit in the 14th inning, Marichal said to his manager, "Do you see that guy pitching for the other team? Do you know that he's 42 years old? Do you know that I'm only 25? As long as that man is still pitching, nobody is taking me out of this game. Finally, in the 16th inning, Willie Mays hit a home run to win the game 1-0. Juan Marichal threw 227 pitches for his complete game victory, and Warren Spahn threw 201 pitches for his complete game loss. For the decade, Spahn led all pitchers with 202 victories, 33 shutouts. He also had 215 complete games with a 2.92 ERA. Spahn finished his Hall of Fame career with a remarkable 363 victories, a 3.09 ERA, and in 1957 he won his only World Series championship.